And Sean Salisbury, and holy smokes, do we have a lot to talk about? Obviously, the big news is coming with your team and Jon Gruden. I've spent a lot of time on this, talking about this on my podcast and my rants. When I first heard and read the story in I believe it was the Wall Street Journal on Friday, I did not feel that his comment was racist at all about DeMaurice Smith. I listened to Tim Brown this past weekend speak about Gruden. I listened to Tony Dungy and Mike Tirico speak up for him on NBC Sunday Night Football show. And then the emails come out yesterday with the homophobic language and everything else. And you know what, Sean? This is really sad. This is such a sad day for the Raiders because the late Al Davis was in the forefront. He was a leader when it came to hiring minorities and women in front office. You know, you had Tom Flores, Hall of Famer, Art Shell, Hall of Famer, Amy Trask, high executive. You know, no one else was doing that in the National Football League. And I can't even imagine what he would think if he were with us today. This is just a real sad, sad chapter in the history of a great franchise.
It is, Grant. It's baffling too. Listen, you can love Jon Gruden, as I'm sure Tony Dungy has mentioned, and Tony's a far from judgmental guy, and Mike Tirico, two of the best people you'll ever meet. But still look at the emails and think, what in the world were you thinking?
Yep.
I really listen. I'm not one of those guys. I don't get offended by much, but why would I be offended by that? But I sure as hell understand why those people, why somebody who's African American or a female or somebody who is who has a different sexual orientation than Jon Gruden, why somebody from the gay community would be offended. I get it. And who am I to tell who should and shouldn't be offended? And I'm with you when it first started, say 11 years ago, and we haven't seen anything from the Washington football team after 650,000 emails. And then Jon, in a roundabout way. First of all, what kind of common sense IQ are these guys having this conversation 11 years ago? It's just silly. I mean, I don't mean silly, funny, silly, like, what are you doing? Jon's always been good to me. I don't know Jon I never was on a team he was on. I only can judge that from players and what they say about him and coaches and people that know. I know Jon. I've interviewed him. We've talked. Matter of fact, irony is a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years ago, whatever it was, last time I saw Jon in person and talked to him was in a Las Vegas airport. And the Raiders weren't even there yet. But it was just maybe we were both traveling for a function. I don't even know what it was, and ran across each other in the line waiting to get through security. And then not that even matters to the story, but I would have never thought, Grant, I always look back and I think, I don't understand being in sports like we are. And I know I'm naive about this. I do. But in the family I grew up in, where it was never significant to worry about race or religion or how a person looked or how they talked or what walk of life they came from. I came from Escondido, which is a Hispanic town in Southern California. If you play sports your whole life, you're with all walks of life. I've always said diversity and understanding and acceptance, the best place you can ever find. It's in a locker room. It's never been. And so I guess I'm naive, even at my age, man, in my 50s, I'm still maybe naive, and I know it exists. I do. Misogynistic and homophobic and race in society and in sports. I just don't want to believe it does, but I know it does. And when you read the emails, like, come on, Jon, what are you doing, man? What are you guys doing? And then, but I still deep down, I don't know what's in his soul and his heart. I don't, Grant. And if I was a teammate or lived with him or was a best friend of his, I could maybe dig in deeper. I don't know. Now, when you read these, it sure looks shitty. It's a horrible read. And so if that's in his gut and in his soul, then that's for him. He's going to have his come to Jesus, and he's going to hit rock bottom, and it's going to be tough, man. You're going to find out who his friends are and how hard it is to get trust back. The other side of it is, who am I to tell an African-American he can't be offended? Who am I to tell you should be offended? That's up to you. I know for me, it was head shaking to see it, to think 7 year after year, you're on Monday Night Football. What would possess you to do this? Everybody jokes. Listen, we all got a skeleton in our closet. Some may be from stealing $50 from your grandma. Some may be from Jon Gruden, bigger or smaller. So I'm not going to be the moral police because I've made plenty of mistakes. But I just, even if you're a guy that loves him, you cannot look at these emails and say, "Oh, this is cool. This is funny." There's nothing funny about him, right? There just isn't. And you just, I don't know. It is sad day in Raider history. And I know it's one of those things I'm trying to grasp it, granted. So I've talked about it a million times, as have you. And I don't want to believe that he thinks like this, right? but it's in his email, and then you're private, and then he's on his Washington football team email. I'm thinking, man, I know you didn't had to grasp what you were doing, but I do think this is one thing about Jon that I do believe. I believe that he loves football. I believe he loves his players. I believe all those things. But one thing I do believe on the other side is I think Jon Gruden is the fair-haired guy throughout his career, and has been everywhere he's gone. Success, Monday Night Football, Super Bowl championship, all that. I think Jon felt at times he was indestructible. And I think a lot of people go through that, Grant. They do, no matter what you do, or it's like, I'm who I am. I can get almost a bit of a narcissistic approach. And I'm not judging. Like I said, if Jon walked in here right now, you know what I'd do? I'd say, I don't understand. That's for you and your come to Jesus moment with whoever you need to apologize to. And I'd put my arm around him and I'd say, man, I hope that you understand what you're about to go through. And I'm here if you need to talk. He's not calling me anyway for it, but because I'm not in the hatred business. I'm just not, because I know this, the times that I've went through mine, and I've held a grudge so deep that I wanted to doggone. At times I thought about putting a friggin' bullet in my head. That's how hot my rock bottom was. But in order to get out of that, I had to stop the grudge, man. I just had to. You think of we all think about crazy. I mean, I don't mean that we all think about, you know what I'm saying, right? The struggles I went through at times, I didn't know if I was going to make it. And mine was minute, stupid cell phone picture, right? In my own phone, while it was self-inflicted, stupid, sophomoric. Do I believe 15 years of being off TV should have been the punishment for it? Absolutely not. But I've served my time, right? But I know the trust factor, and it was my fault. I get it. But I know the struggles I went through over just that. Now imagine all the burden that he's going to carry around. And you know what? Unfortunately for him, when you make that bed, and when you rob Peter, you're going to have to pay Paul. He's done in football. I don't know how he gets back, and his broadcasting, I don't know how he does either. But I don't wish anger and hatred and grudge on him. I just don't. Because there's people are going to hold a grudge against him. But for me, my point was that I went through. There was a couple situations in my life that I said, man, why would somebody want to do this, right? Yet look in the mirror and say, Sean, you got to fix it because you screwed up. And it's when you own it, and accountability is an ugly thing sometimes, but it's there. And when I got rid of the grudge, my life got better again. And it's better than it's ever been because I have a better understanding over a stupid mistake. But this is a big mistake. And we say mistake. A mistake is when you run through a yellow light, when it turns green, light turns yellow. Right. Mistake isn't understanding that 7 straight years of this. So I feel bad for everybody that has to go through the suffering, the Raiders. Gruden's going to suffer, his family, he's got kids, all those things. I'm sure I don't know if he's got grandkids or not, but all the collateral damage, and then the people you've offended that trusted you, getting trust back is going to be tough for him.
I was around Jon Gruden a lot when he coached the Raiders because I was working in Sacramento and covered the Raiders a lot. And then right after Jon left, I did the Raiders preseason games on TV with Jim Plunkett for 5 years. And I got to know a lot of the players on the Raiders. And it was very interesting because I got to know white players, the black players, but a couple of the players told me that they didn't respect Jon, but they didn't say anything that was inflammatory. They didn't talk about anything dealing with race. These were conversations with black players that never came up. And, you've played for a lot of coaches. I'm sure you haven't respected them all. But you know what? It really bothered me today to hear Keyshawn Johnson come out and call Jon Gruden a fraud. You've been on TV. You've had that platform for years, Keyshawn. And, Keyshawn had his issues in the NFL. I mean, if you really want to look at Keyshawn's career, he was an underachiever his whole career, and he was self-inflicted. Is it right for Keyshawn Johnson now to go on national TV and say that Jon Gruden's always been a fraud? That kind of bothers me a little bit. Listen, you made a great point. Jon, this is all self-inflicted. This has nothing to do with anyone other than himself. He's the one that's going to have to deal with this. You and I have a very interesting perspective on what it's like to be towards the top of the mountain, get knocked down. All right. You went through it.
Start climbing again.
Right. Yep. And I'm going through it now. And I don't know about you, and this is not really about you and me, but I wanted to point this out. I actually wish, and I hope this doesn't sound self-centered or anything, I actually wish I had done something wrong. Because I have a very difficult time accepting my fate for saying all lives matter, every single one. And Like, I actually wish I had done something wrong or stupid. Like, and that's the part that I have a
You're
really
talking
difficult
about you
time.
wish your punishment fit the crime, is what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. Jon, and you and I know about your situation, and the thing I love about you is you are out there. You don't hide anything. I mean, your stories make my hair stand up sometimes, and what you've gone through and how honest you are about everything that happened to you during a really horrible period of time. And you just made a really good point about Jon. Jon may not realize it right now, but he's not even close to his rock bottom.
Oh.
His rock bottom is way in front of him. And it's for each of us to figure out how to get through that rock bottom. And I know people are going to say, well, gee, he's got 40, 50, $60 million in the bank. You know what? That doesn't really, money helps. But when you're unhappy, you're unhappy. And when you're at rock bottom, you're at rock bottom. And money doesn't take you out of rock bottom. So I thought you made some really good points there.
Thank you. And Grant, it's, listen, I don't wish rock bottom on anybody, but sometimes that come to Jesus is what you need. Because if rock bottom prevents you from doing something even dumber, or from endangering somebody else, when I say endangering or hurting the collateral damage, when you got to come home from work and your 12-year-old kid has somebody at school say, what was your dad doing? Not fun. Collateral damage is when you lay by your toilet after drinking a full bottle of booze and you're not even a big drinker, thinking that tomorrow I'm not going to make it. Rock bottom is forget the money. Is driving to a hotel and not having any anymore after losing your house, your dad dying, you're divorced, and your best friend, you don't talk to anybody, and it's lonely laying on the toilet thinking, you know what? A couple extra Percocet may do here.
Wow.
Rock bottom is when you reach for a gun that's unloaded and decide that you want to drive your truck around and wonder if you should load it.
Wow.
Rock bottom is wondering if you're the embarrassment that you've caused your family and wonder if anybody and whatever our rock bottom is, how we got there is one thing. And then you think, how did I get to rock bottom for that? And then rock bottom is waking up one day and wondering if you can make it through the next day and going to your ATM machine, if you're talking about money, and going in there and it's on the minus side. And rock bottom is having to borrow a buddy's car, go give a lesson to somebody, a quarterback lesson, so you can actually pay. And rock bottom is sleeping on a couch. And rock bottom is spending 100 days a year after you were at the top of the mountain over one stupid sophomoric error in your own cell phone, is spending 75 to 100 days in a year sleeping in your truck.
Wow.
Doing a podcast that you can't plug in your computer after you've woke up in the middle of Iowa, doing a podcast, just trying to stay relevant with yourself. That and then the rock bottom is people who used to hug you that all of a sudden feel like you got leprosy because you can't be around them anymore. That's what rock bottom is. Rock bottom is people that you protected through and through on a regular basis, and in the end still have them protected and would never break that barrier because you're a different cat and and it's not a matter of patting me on the back. I don't mean that.
No, I know. Hey, listen, you're not like that.
I've owned every step of the way.
Yep.
I've never thrown anybody under the bus.
Right.
I have never talked bad about my previous employer. Listen, I know what it's like when you're pointing a finger to point the thumb back at yourself. Self-inflicted. The whole point of this is back to Jon, is he has zero. And when you talked about money, Jon could have $100 million. When you feel like you failed somebody, failed yourself, failed your family, and then you walk down, and Grant, and I'll tell you what else rock bottom is, where for 4 or 5 years you're afraid to death to eat in a restaurant and paranoid because every time somebody stares at you, when you know you've been on, you think they're talking about you. And you say, well, I don't care about it. Trust me, when it's come, you get your food and you go. Rock bottom is when you go to the movie theater and sit movie after the other, and you go out and come back in and you got the last few bucks and you're paying for a movie, because the reality of being away from reality for 6 hours for 3 straight movies on a 100-degree day in the summer is the only escape, because you're humiliated, right? And then wondering, how am I ever going to get a gig again? And you think, why is it like this? And then looking around. So you're right. Listen, I don't envy what he's going to go through. I know it is self-inflicted. It doesn't mean, though, that we can't have grace and that I have to hate a guy because I know how people treat me, and he's going to go through difficult times. I'm just telling you, no matter how tough he is or on the surface and how tough we are, there's an empty feeling that you feel that there's part of you that feels like you, and my biggest problem was you get your identity, which you should never do, locked into your career. When your identity, for a long time it wasn't. Then you get to it, you get locked in, and you think, man, you treat people great. I've always been a good person. I never ever was mean to anybody. I've always been kind, and then it hits you. And this, I'm just saying, this is what he's going to go through now. Whether he's been kind or what have you, all those things that come to fruition, but he's going to have to rely on, and it ain't going to be many of them that are going to be there. Listen, I'm just telling you. For Jon, it's not. You and I both. It's not going to be a lot of people that he can call up and say, "Man, you want to have a beer with?" There may be some, and he's gonna find out a lot about himself too. And I know it sounds cheesy, and I don't mean it like that, but I don't envy it. But you know what? For 7 years, when you're doing this, you got to understand that there's an end game to this. That somehow, some way, the trust factor. And you mentioned Keyshawn. Now listen, I understand where you're coming with Keyshawn, and I'm not. When people have a platform, they use it. I've known Keyshawn. So he was our ball boy at USC. I've known Key. I used to drive him home. And you're entitled to your opinion on this too, Grant. And there's some things I disagree and agree with Keyshawn. I love him. He's like a family for me. But I also know this, that I know that there's some hard feelings with him and Jon from the times they played together, right? And I get it. Of
course. I get it too.
The reason why I can't get mad at him now, whether I agree with him or not on some of the things, one thing, but I love him like family, and that's okay. You're allowed, once again, you're allowed to disagree with somebody and not have hate him, right? Exactly.
That's right.
And hell, that's life. Unfortunately, that's not society now. You're supposed to disagree and hate everybody if they don't agree with you, right?
Right.
But I refuse to do that because I know that's just not me. I root for people's success. And with Key, I know that there's probably some hard feelings about things and whatever those are. And whatever he's feeling, the emotion hit him. And that's okay. He's allowed to, but there's going to be people that love Jon and there's going to be people that don't. And Keyshawn has a strong feeling about Jon, and that's okay. And for me, on both sides, I feel sorry for those that are looking at it and are offended by it. I can't imagine what Carl Nassib's going through. Yet Jon has him on the team, yet he's an openly gay player that you think, well, which one is he? Is he the guy who has me on the team, or is he the guy from the emails? Or can people change? I don't know how deep in his soul Jon feels about this, or is it just really just joking, but it's not funny to people. And it's not going to be funny in 1960. It's not funny in 1980. It's not funny in 2005 or 2008 and 2010. And it's not funny in 2050. But I'm not the moral high horse, because you know what? When I opened that closet, I had one fall out, or like I've mentioned before, skeleton too. And I always guard against it. And Jon or anybody else, Damari Smith, I root for them not to be angry, and I root for them to have understanding, and I root for whoever needs to get whatever it is in their life fixed, including Jon Gruden. Easy as it may sound, I know I root for it. And I can't always say I did. I can't always say that I didn't hold a grudge for a while. It was tearing me apart, almost to the point of feeling ulcers. And when I finally let go, I realized that, Jon, you got to look in the mirror. You're to blame. Go fix it. And when I immersed myself in others, and Jon Gruden could learn a lot from that, immerse yourself into helping others, is when my life turned back around for the better. And that's how I got out of it. And if there's a message in it, he's going to go through it. I don't care how many cars you buy or how many houses you live. You can play golf all you want, Grant. He is going to go through it, and he's going to realize that circle gets real small. And whenever that comeback is that he feels good again, that circle, make sure it doesn't get too big. But Jon has to know that a lot of this is on him.
All right, I want to make a transition now to on the field. And
sorry about that.
I said
some of those things. I
get
emotional this because I hate to see lives ruined, and I hate. I hate even talking about it. Don't you, Grant? I know we have to. What I mean about hate talking about it is I like to wake up and talk about great baseball and basketball, uplifting stories, right? But unfortunately, in sports, we don't have them all the time.
You know what though? Like, everybody's fucking can talk about the games. There aren't a lot of people that can talk about real fucking life, what you have gone through and what I've gone through. I mean, and I'm not putting myself on a high horse, but when you're in the public eye and you have that blue check mark next to your fucking name and you're on TV and everyone knows you, and then something happens, your life is not private. Okay. if your next door neighbor does something stupid, his family knows about it, and maybe a few family members, but the whole fucking neighborhood doesn't know about it, and the town doesn't know about it, and the next county doesn't know about it, and so on and so forth. And so, like, your stories to me are uplifting, educational, and there's no bullshit to your stories. And I've always tried to be the same way. And I always share what I'm feeling and what I've gone through and how I'm living my life today. And I'm going to tell you, Sean, I sent you the email or the text message that I got after you were on my podcast from somebody that was 40 years old. And based on what I sent you, it almost sounded like to me that person was where you were, rock bottom, where they were thinking about ending their life. And that individual said that after listening to you on my podcast, that it changed his entire outlook, and he got his family members back, and he's back on his way to living a productive life. And again, I don't want to sound bullshit corny, but I said to myself after that, I said, you know what? I don't know if we and you saved that person's life, but I do know one thing based on what he said. You being on my podcast changed that person's life. And if we changed and or saved one person's life, that I'm fucking fine losing my job and everything else. And I really mean that. So like when we talk about these things and we give our perspective because we've lived it, although your situation and mine's a little bit different, but we both hit fucking rock bottom, is I think there are a lot of people that listen to us and go, fuck, listen to them. They're in the public eye. Everyone knows them and they're bearing it all out. They don't have any fucking secrets. They're putting it all out so that we can help others. And so, no, fucking A, go for it because we need to help others, Sean.
And Grant, I appreciate that. And you do the same. We've had a lot of conversations, you and I.
Yeah.
And listen, my road back, even though it wasn't filled with $1 million paychecks like previous, you always hope you get there again, because now the $1 million paychecks for me are to make sure other people aren't struggling. I know that sounds, but it is. When I see people, I'm like when I house the homeless gentleman, Russell Brissett, I get to a point where you learn great perspective. And when I get stories like that, I'll get inboxes I'll share a story because I'm transparent. I got nothing to hide because, when you hit rock bottom, the only thing good about coming back from rock bottom is there's nothing that you have to hide behind a wall or you listen, fucking up sucks. But coming back from fucking up can be really, what's the word I'm looking for? Difference making, better than throwing any touchdown pass or breaking down any analysis. Now, you never want anybody to go through, but when you do, I had two choices and I almost wilted in a lot of ways, but to come back. So, and when you mentioned that story, when you sent me that, it moves me because I know that people are listening sometimes going, damn, this is just a normal guy. We're just normal dudes that just happen to do something different than somebody else in a profession. And they fucked up like we all do. And that's why I raise my hand when they say, who did you fuck up? I'll raise my hand and say, yep, I sure